The third Edict update has introduced a few sweeping changes that have had a huge impact on the overall state of Path of Exile 2. The removal of the support gem limit and the extensive additions to crafting specifically are at the top of that list. These changes have shaken up balance in a big way, but balance in Path of Exile 2 is not in a good place right now. And I'm not talking about character to character balance or even skill to skill balance. Those have problems too, but they're bound to be addressed over time as the rest of the game is fleshed out with the remaining missing classes and Ascendancies, and as new weapon types are added in with new skills and updates to the passive tree. No, the balance that I'm referring to here is exactly where an average character build obtains their power from. Now this is obviously an extensive list of sources. You have the passive tree and jewels socketed within, you have an Ascendancy choice and the nodes that are chosen, there's the character's armor and weapon items, there's flasks and charms, there's also their skills and support gem choices. These things combined make up a character build, and each source of character power should probably be somewhat comparable to each other in terms of how much power is gained from any one source relative to the others. Because by balancing these factors out, you can keep each one in check. There's never a case where one or several of these components are severely lacking behind the curve because they all kind of rely on each other to balance out a build. However, that's not what we have in Path of Exile 2 right now. In the current game, there's a giant imbalance regarding where character power is coming from, where the passive tree is generally too weak and generic, whilst a character's gear, that being their armor and weapon items, are providing a huge majority of their overall power. And this right here, in my opinion, is the biggest problem that Path of Exile 2 must solve in the coming updates. Because when you look at a lot of the issues that the game has right now, many of which I discussed in my previous video, a lot of these problems can be traced back to gear providing far too much power relative to anything else. So let's take a look at a few of those issues. First of all, the player experience throughout Path of Exile 2. Players' experience playing through the game, especially regarding their very first playthrough, is something that can somewhat be curated. GGG have done quite a bit of work on this aspect, with subtle guaranteed drops in specific campaign areas, and points of interest you can visit as you traverse through the acts that reward you for seeking them out, whether it be with a guaranteed rare item drop, or Artificer's Orbs, or Jeweler's Orbs. They've tried to make sure that they can offset the RNG imposed by other systems in the game, by making sure the player has what they need to keep moving forward. However, as useful as many of these guaranteed drops are, they don't really come anywhere close to making up for having bad gear. As an example, gaining the guaranteed Jeweler's Orb at the beginning of Act 3 might net you in the region of 20 to 30% more damage from the extra support gem. That's pretty good, but the damage you're dealing is largely determined by your weapon. This is true even for spell builds due to the sheer amount of damage modifiers you can obtain on a wand or a staff, but it's especially true for attack builds of course, where the base damage is directly derived from weapon damage. If you already had a bad weapon, gaining 20 or 30% more damage isn't going to feel all that impactful. And obviously if you had a great weapon, well, you were probably already trivializing the game, so now you get to kill things a bit faster, I guess. Now this of course rewards knowledge, which I think is something that must exist in a game like Path of Exile 2. A player that knows how to utilize all of the tools at their disposal, and a player that knows what item modifiers are useful and what's not useful, will be able to navigate Path of Exile 2's campaign without many problems at all, even if they have terrible RNG with bad item drops and currency drops. This is because they'll know how to best utilize whatever resources they get their hands on, and on top of that, they also better understand game mechanics and monster and boss mechanics. However, a player that doesn't know what to do with their currency, for example, not using the essences that they come across, or not making use of their regals or exalted orbs, or not gambling for a weapon upgrade, or not checking the vendor for movement speed boosts. All of these things are knowledge gaps, and the difference in the gameplay experience between a player that knows what to do and one that doesn't is massive. And to be clear, I think this should be a thing. Rewarding player knowledge is a good thing, but right now, far too much player power is gained from items, and not enough is gained from the passive tree and elsewhere. to the point where it's very hard to offset bad RNG with good passive tree choices. And so let's get on to the single largest contributor to this problem, and I probably should have started the video out with this point, but we'll get onto it now. Gem level modifiers on gear. They're completely out of control. This one item modifier provides way too much power, not just compared to other item modifiers, but compared to everything else. The passive tree, Ascendancies, everything else pales in comparison. For most builds, a weapon is complete trash if it doesn't have gem levels. It can have every other perfect tier 1 modifier, but if it lacks gem levels, it's not good. This is so extreme that a mediocre weapon with a gem levels modifier beats a perfect weapon without it. So what's going on here? Well, for some reason you can obtain up to 7 gem levels on a two-handed weapon, then up to 3 on an amulet, more in the case of unique amulets. Then there's the gloves, you can gain some gem levels for melee skills on there too. And then there's even the Prism of Belief jewel that you can gain another 3 gem levels for a specific skill. Now this is just a ridiculous amount of gem levels, especially when you realise how much damage they provide. So let's not even take the most extreme example, let's first just look at a crossbow with and without a gem levels modifier. So a perfect Essence of Battle adds 6 gem levels to attack skills. Explosive Grenade goes from 878% attack damage effectiveness at gem level 20 to 1372% at level 26. That's 56% more damage from a single modifier on a potential 6 affix crossbow. And that's just the weapon. There's also the amulet for another 3 gem levels, at which point Explosive Grenade would have 1716% attack damage effectiveness, or about 95% more damage compared to having no gem level modifiers. And you know this gets really ridiculous with two-handed maces and Giant's Blood and things like that, but this isn't just an endgame thing. The difference between having a weapon with gem level scaling and not having one in the campaign is like night and day. You simply gain too much power from this one modifier. But here's the point. Why is it that a single affix on your weapon can provide up to 7 gem levels, whilst a single notable on the tree may provide just 1 if you're lucky? By the way, these notables on the passive tree, the ones that provide a single gem level, they're some of the strongest nodes on the tree if you can make use of them. Now I think gem level modifiers on items need to be toned down, and not just a little bit. Two-handed weapons should probably be able to roll a maximum of maybe 3 gem levels, with that top tier having very low weight, and for amulets, they should use the system that already works from PoE 1. One modifier that rolls +1 to all skill levels, and another set of modifiers for +1 to specific skill types for a total of up to +2, but it's harder to craft and takes 2 affixes rather than 1. Now obviously, this is just one example of gear being too strong and the passive tree and elsewhere not being strong enough. But I think if GGG are able to review some of the more egregious contributors to this problem, they should be able to narrow down the gap between these fluctuations in RNG that some players have experienced. And that way, they also won't need to put anywhere near as many guaranteed progressional drops into the campaign, because you can have a better baseline of expected character power from gear. Now the other side of this issue, of course, is the passive tree and Ascendancies. GGG have added a lot of new wheels to the tree in patch 0.3, which I think is progress in the right direction, but I'd generally like to see more powerful options on the tree, some more niche build-specific options, and that can go for Ascendancies too. I think when you have Ascendancies like the Deadeye that are just generically very powerful, that's quite boring. Ideally, Ascendancies should be more niche, providing interesting build-defining options within their niche, rather than just being the generically strong projectile Ascendancy like the Deadeye is right now. I think the Warbringer is quite a good example of a niche Ascendancy that's done well in the current game. It has the Totem branch with the Ancestral minions to provide buffs, it has the Warcry node which is really powerful and specialised, and then it has the Armor Break branch. And even though the inverted armor break isn't that strong at the moment, it's still going in the right direction. It's allowing you to invest into a mechanic and gain something beyond just scaling it like you normally would it now does something that no other class can access, and I think that's a good idea, even if it could be a bit more powerful. But what are your thoughts on this issue in Path of Exile 2 right now? Let me know what you think by commenting below. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.